Welcome to our Lunchtime Live program on WJEJ, a monthly partnership with Washington County Public Schools. We're here the third Thursday of the month at this time. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. We may turn this into an annual affair because it worked out great last year, and we have good hopes for a great show today as we talk about Washington Goes Purple. Rejoining us for our show this year, City Council member Emily Keller from here in Hagerstown, and Matt Mauriello is here, principal of Western Heights Middle School. Vicki Sterling was on our bill for the day, but she can't make it from the Washington County Health Department from Behavioral Health Services. She has also played. She was with us last year on the show along with Sheriff Mullendore and has played a big part in sort of the guts of the effort since it started. Welcome to the both of you. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Emily, you want to let's do the history lesson, the brief history of Washington Goes Purple. It sounds pretty, it sounds romantic, but this is some tough stuff.
It is. Yes. Actually, a sheriff in Talbot County launched Talbot Goes Purple, and we kind of followed suit. And what we realized in the midst of the deadliest health crisis in U.S. history is that overall we were being very reactive to the addiction issue, and we weren't being proactive. So the mission is to educate our kids about the dangers of prescription painkiller abuse and other drugs. This year, we're expanding that into mental health awareness as well. But we really just wanted to get in front of as many community members as possible and encourage the adults to be locking up the prescription medication, make sure they're properly disposing of it, and then talk to the kids about how, just because a doctor prescribes it to me doesn't mean it's safe for you, and basic lessons that we think we should be having and we realize that we weren't.
This is one of those messages that you can pinpoint a particular target audience, and yet this is easily for everybody.
Absolutely. And that's something we've really tried hard to do, is include the entire community. So we have, the Chamber of Commerce, the business community has been on board, the faith-based community, the school systems, just everyday citizens that want to participate and want to help make our community safer and healthier. We try to make sure that everyone feels involved and that there's not a segment of the community that doesn't.
What's different a year later?
I think this year, we started in May of last year, and by September we kicked off, and it was huge. We were humbled by how big it got so quickly. This year we've had time to really go out and explain the messages. We've met with the Rotary clubs and the exchange clubs and really anyone that would have us come into it. And we've partnered with Brook Lane to work on mental health messaging, and we've really just been able to refine what we are trying to do. We've held more drug take-backs, which is where we're collecting unused and unwanted medication off of our streets.
Just did it last evening, in fact.
Yes, in the West End. It was a great turnout. We have just normal everyday citizen volunteers, a police officer, and a firefighter. We literally go door to door, explain our message, hand out material, and collect unused medication. We've collected hundreds of pounds. Actually, it was 1,300 the last time we counted. Literally trash bags full of medicine that was just sitting in people's cabinets. And a lot of the petty theft that police are seeing is related to people raiding medicine cabinets, and something that you wouldn't really think about if we weren't trying to spread that message. So I think it's been a bigger community buy-in this year.
Well, how about the folks who don't buy in? For instance, when you're going door to door, human nature's such that not everybody buys in as quickly as we'd like. What kind of, whether it's negative voices, whether it's hesitation, whether it's just flat out, get out of my life, get out of my house, get out of my, my world. How does that range of negativity come into play? There has to be.
It's interesting. I think we are so far into this epidemic that everyone realizes we can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening. It is. It's happening in every neighborhood, in every part of our community. It's not just downtown Hagerstown. It's all over the county. I think the biggest thing we heard from the negative side was, what does painting everything purple do? And that's kind of our favorite thing to address, because honestly, it's not about turning everything purple. It's about giving the community hope. And for that kid who's struggling because they're seeing their parents struggle, they can look around and see a purple light and say, hey, my community cares, and they're doing something about it. For the person who's already struggling, that feels like they don't have any hope. Imagine driving through downtown and seeing all these people participating in all this purple, and businesses, restaurants. You just walk every day into something and see, wow, like the community is rallying to try to prevent this from happening in the future and to try to make ourselves healthier. So I think that's an easy talk off to the naysayers. What does turning everything purple do?
You could have picked any color.
Yeah, purple is the color of recovery, though.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm just saying, in general terms, like you said, it's not about the color.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about the message.
It symbolizes a lot more than that.
Yes.
We got some stats this week from the state. What do those stats mean to you?
Well, it's a good sign. Overdoses are down slightly, not quickly enough. Deaths are pretty much remaining consistent, and that's because of the introduction of fentanyl into drugs. So we are down slightly, though. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd be at zero. It's going to take years to get there. But overall, as a state, it's the first time in 10 years we've seen a decrease. That tells me that the awareness activities that are happening, the money that's going into treatment, it's working. And I mean, if we flip the switch today and turn addiction off, it's going to take 10, 15 years to recover from this anyway. So it's going to be a slow process. It's going to be hard to document wins, immediate wins. But I think over time, we're going to see them more and more.
Is it tough for you and other folks who aren't in the thick of the medical side of this, the clinical side of this, to make sure that the message is... That seems to be a tough part of the message for folks to understand, you know, the medicine, the health aspects of it. I mean, obviously we can see the effects of what we're talking about, but to deliver a message related to, you know, to the health and the clinical part of it, we could use Vicki here today because of that. I'm sure you have it down by now.
Yeah. Well, and we do have the health department heavily involved. Vicki, Holly Luther, who's in charge of prevention with the health department, is the one that's delivering the messaging to the school system. So it's not like me, an insurance agent, just out there making up medical terms. I mean, we do have the health department involved. I think the biggest thing is humanizing it to people who have been lucky enough to not be blessed personally by addiction yet, and saying, you know, Purdue Pharma, that maker of OxyContin, admitted under oath that they lied about the addictiveness of prescription painkillers. They lied, and they admitted it. And they're telling doctors, here, hand out this medicine. It's not going to make your patients addicted. Then they turned to heroin because it's cheaper. So I think for a long time, people didn't want to admit that. People didn't want to see it. They wanted to see a heroin user as just some, you know, dirty person on the corner, where in reality, that's not how this started at all. So I think humanizing it like that, and then with the turn of these lawsuits and the prescription companies coming out and saying, hey, we did play a part in this, I think really is a big deal.
As big and broad as the topic is, we can make it incredibly personal. I can't imagine that almost all of us don't have somebody, you know, either immediately associated with this, whether it's a family member, extended family member. There can't be that many degrees of separation for almost all of us with some touch to this one way or another.
Absolutely, for sure. And we get to hear that every day. That's part of the really neat things about volunteering with Washington Goes Purple. And last week at a community event, I had a woman come up and hug me and said she just celebrated 1 week clean. I mean, she felt comfortable telling us that. I mean, what a win for a week. And I told her the next time I see her, I hope she was celebrating a month and then a year. And people are very forthcoming with their stories because I think they realize now they don't have to hide behind the stigma.
Right. You're listening to Lunchtime Live on WJEJ, a partnership once a month with Washington County Public Schools. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. You can follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. Joining me today, Emily Keller, member of Hagerstown City Council, and Matt Mauriello is here as principal at Western Heights Middle School. Matt, what's your angle? Western Heights is, if I'm understanding this right, a pilot school for what?
That's correct. We're one of the 3 pilot schools for Washington County Public Schools in partnership with Washington Goes Purple. Bester Elementary School, North Hagerstown High School, and Western Heights Middle School are the pilot schools to really bring Washington Goes Purple to the forefront in our efforts to help support this great cause.
And what does that entail?
Well, I think it probably entails what you want it to at your school level, and as much as your building, your staff, your community, and students will support. For us, we support Washington Goes Purple in September on Fridays. We do Purple Outs. Tomorrow we'll do another collection for some funds for Washington Goes Purple that we'll donate, which we did last year. And we've also devoted 8 Friday advisements of a half an hour throughout the school year, basically once a month, directly related to the efforts that Washington Goes Purple is working toward. Next Friday will be our first, and we'll start with opioid addiction. We're working with Holly Luther to get some resources and curriculum to get out to our teachers and to get in the hands of our students so they better understand what the effort is that their community is supporting.
Prior to Purple, how was this message getting to the kids?
Not well enough. This really brings a focus and a light. I know that part of our curriculum in a few different areas, in health specifically, health and PE, that's certainly an area that we focused on. But this just allows us to bring some more light. If it's a purple light, then so be it. But a light of understanding and acceptance that no one's immune from this epidemic, and it's not just local. And we all do have a part to spread that message to our students. And the younger that they are, elementary school, middle school, better opportunity we have to educate them to make some great choices for themselves in their future, but also understand a little bit about what might be happening in their homes with their families.
Your kids at school, from 6th to 8th grade, the age range is what in general terms?
11 to 14.
11 to 14, which is a key age group in this whole effort.
It really is.
I think the earlier and the more often we can deliver that message, the more consistently they hear it, that when they're faced with the opportunity to use or to try something, that they may remember, hey, we learned about this. Here's what could happen if I make this decision. I have an 11-year-old. I'd like to think that she'll never be in a position where she'll be offered prescription painkillers or other drugs, but I also live in the real world and know that she probably will. So I just want her to have the resources to make good decisions and to know what the outcome could be.
I can guarantee you there are some folks listening now, whether they don't want to hear this message or they don't understand it because they're a generation or two beyond this, who might think, might actually say, might believe, or they do believe, but boy, an 11-year-old, this message to an 11-year-old, that seems heavy. That seems heavy-handed. That seems early. Let them be kids. That's not really the real world anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, life has changed. My 17 years as an educator, an 11-year-old has access to far more information than they did in the early 2000s, certainly than I did 25 years ago as a middle schooler. So it's important to make sure that the information that they have access to, they understand.
Do you have just anecdotal conversations with kids in your years at Western Heights, related to not necessarily directly with the student, with the child, but maybe they're relaying things about, family life, home life, neighborhood life, where some of these, you've been aware of some of these issues in individual circumstances up till this point? We've not just started this as an issue at Western Heights or anywhere else over the last year.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that as an administrator and as a teacher early in my career that you would deal with. I mean, I talk to my staff a lot about really needing to understand what 215 to 715 looks like for students. It's not an excuse that they can't achieve academically, behaviorally, but we do have to understand what happens when students go home and they're not in our care. Sometimes the best part of their day is with us, and it's part of our job as educators not to just teach content and curriculum, but to really work with the whole student and their families to support their needs.
How important are the schools, Emily?
I think it's the most important. They have access to our children, 8 hours a day,
Right.
7 hours a day, and the children trust their schools. They feel safe there. They feel comfortable there. I think hearing the message from the people that they respect and that they trust and in an area that they feel safe makes it more impactful. And I think, like I said, as earlier and as often and consistently as we can get in front of children, I think that's going to be the key. And I don't think we've done that well enough as a country over the last several years.
What's been we have any number of ways which have been effective, some maybe not as much. What have you found locally that's been most effective? Some of the ways that have been most effective in getting the message out, in getting the message across, and making the message impact, whether it's in the schools or just generally in the community. What's worked?
We heard last year, we did a panel for the Student Government Association from all the different schools, high schools. And we did a panel. We had, some police officers, some health officers, but we had a couple people in recovery who shared their story. One is a South High graduate that I went to school with that was involved with drugs and gangs and has now turned his life around, works for the state, is about to graduate college. And he was able to relate to these kids like, I was you, and I was destroying my community to try to make myself feel good and try to be cool and to try to live up to these standards. And we got more feedback on his speech than anything that we had done. Even when we did an essay contest for scholarships through Washington Goes Purple, we had 37 applicants, and several of them spoke about Rob speaking at their school and how impactful it was. And of course, that's a high school level. He wouldn't share that same story with elementary school kids. You have to approach it different. But I think making it real life and having the children hear like, hey, this was me. He was me. He was in this exact seat at this exact school doing these same things. I think that was impactful. And then I think being present in the community has been impactful because we've tried to make sure that we're hitting all areas, like I said. And I think that people see the messaging. They can talk to us. They can come up and share their stories with us, take information home. We have information cards for parents on how to have a conversation with your kids about prescription painkillers and other abuse. And I think just being able to hand them that and encouraging them to do that has been impactful.
Matt, do you feel like we're credible as a school system, you and your staff, as opposed to the kind of experiences that fellow relayed right out of the trenches, off his deathbed, off of addiction, deliver the message as strong as anybody could with that set of experiences? I mean, does your staff have the, this is not a challenge, I'm just rhetorically, do they have the credibility to get the message across to the kids, to make an impact on the day-to-day?
I think so, but I think our role's a little bit different. Rob's job was to tell his story. And I keep thinking back to this time or so last year, and we keep hearing the new conversation, the new conversation, the new conversation. I think our job as educators isn't necessarily just to share the information. Often you hear give students a voice. The students have a voice. We just need to listen. It has really been incredible over the last few weeks, the amount of posters that we have that we could submit to the poster contest that's coming up. I met with my graphic arts teacher yesterday, Tyler Rawl, and we have so many. I think in-house we're going to do something to try to pare it down because students do have a voice, and what they're sharing in their posters, whether it's a story that's a personal narrative, maybe it's something about a family, something about information they think needs to be out to other students, it's impactful. So, I feel like our job as educators, not always just to share the information, but not to stifle the opportunities for students to share what they think.
Well, and these kids could come to any teacher, any one of their teachers, no matter what the subject area, no matter what grade level, no matter what part of the building, that any one of those teachers in whatever job it is at your school could have a relationship with one or many more of those kids that could be important in growing that kid out of personal situations, out of potentially a medical situation, potentially a future criminal situation. It's not just about purple and opioids and all of that.
No.
The relationships go well beyond that, both in school and out.
I keep using the word relationships, Will, and there's nothing more important in my building than relationships. No significant learning occurs without that significant relationship or relationships, and that's just something that I've continued to promote and will so long as I'm principal at Western Heights, that we're going to take time to get to know our kids, to understand our kids, because if not, it's not really what you know. It's how you treat students. That's really what they're going to remember. The impact that you can have on students, whether it's regarding opioids or your content, is going to start with that significant relationship first.
Well, and it refreshes. This is a specific topic. I mean, it's a broad specific topic in a sense, but there are so many other things that these kids bring to school that you and your staff are trying. You're not only trying to teach them math, but there's so much more. They're bringing much more than issues with prescription medications into school in the day-to-day. It actually opens up that much more dialogue. It's that much more valuable, I think, that the kids trust you and your staff, to bring that stuff into school, to hash it out, maybe walk out the door that much more confident, that much stronger. Same for all of us in the community, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think you take it even a step further. The community trusts what we're doing at Western Heights, and the conversations that we're having with students are in their best interest. And it takes time to build that culture. It takes time to build that environment and that trust. But the community support really is what's allowing us to make some significant headway with students.
Yeah. How much patience do you have? Because we obviously would like to fix it today.
Yes.
This school year, last school year,
Yes.
and you're talking about 10 to 15 year time frames, depending on what you look at, what angle you take on this.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, this whole subject is personal to me. So when I hear the bad news and I see the bad headlines and I hear we just had another death or we just had another, it's very frustrating. And because I do want to fix it, I want to fix it now. And I know the whole community wants to fix it now. The reality of it is we can't. So slowly but surely, we're going to get there. It's encouraging. I run out of patience on some days. I get frustrated. I think, wow, there's all these organizations putting in so much time and effort. And some days it just feels like you're not getting anywhere. Or you read another bad headline, or you hear how meth is making a comeback, or, the headlines that we saw today. And it's frustrating because it's like, okay, now we have more hurdles to get over. But we'll get there. And it is really encouraging to see everyone come together.
If you're just joining us, this is Lunchtime Live. We're talking Washington Goes Purple. It's an effort across Washington County and easily goes well beyond the borders. But we're talking about the effort here in Washington County. A member of Hagerstown City Council, Emily Keller, is here, along with Matt Mauriello, principal at Western Heights Middle School, right in the thick of the education side of this. As a pilot school in partnering with Washington Goes Purple. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown, or visit the website, volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. What can listeners who are maybe new to this, maybe they didn't join us last year, maybe they haven't gotten the whole impact of Washington Goes Purple in their households, at their churches, in their day-to-day, what can that person, that family, that household, that business, what can they do to join in?
Well, we have a ton of community events that are happening throughout September. They're on our website, WashingtonGoesPurple.com. We have material all over our Facebook page, different videos, different educational materials that if they could just listen and share and help spread that message. Throughout September, when we literally do the visual purple, even something as simple as putting a purple light bulb on your front porch to show your neighborhood that you're involved and supportive of the effort. As far as businesses, we would love to come talk to staff members, team members, spread our message. Also, we do Narcan training. Vicki can Narcan train. We're really encouraging the community to have Narcan to be able to save a life should they find themselves in that situation. So we'll come to you and hold that kind of training if that's something that people are interested in. And just inviting us in to talk and spread the message is very helpful.
How do you avoid a drop-off on October 1st? Either in enthusiasm or any other angle to this. What happens on October 1st?
Nothing different because we are booked through October right now
Right.
in the same amount of events that we're having in September. A lot of the bigger community events are not because it's going to get cold, but we are continuing the messaging, continuing the education weekly throughout the year. So September is, of course, the big visual push. It is the color of recovery, the month of recovery, and that's what we're really rallying behind. But Washington Goes Purple is definitely a all-year initiative.
That has to feel energizing, and I know you and yours have put a lot of effort into that. It's the same with any other observance, any other recognition, any other ceremonial day, month, or whatever. You focus on it that day, that month, and then maybe even in the heads of the community, you set it aside. Mm-hmm. This is one you can't set it aside.
We can't. It's far too important. And I mean, this is the biggest health crisis in U.S. history. We're gonna have to keep it up consistently. So we're encouraged by the amount of events that we have already scheduled throughout into next year, and organizations that are already pledging support for next September. The Arts Council is holding another Purple event, and different organizations that are already planning for 2020, which makes me twitch a little bit, but is also very encouraging.
Do you see how much of the dark side do you see in school on the day-to-day? Like, individual kids, individual effects of this, I mean, the very, very personal side of this.
Yeah, I'd say, my experience at the high school level, you see more of a personal conversation about issues maybe that they're having with opioids or using drugs. At the middle school level, we don't see quite as much of that, but we see the impact and the fallout that what happens with family or extended family or neighbors or other community members that students witness, and that's trauma. Students are traumatized a lot of ways, and that happens to be one that's pretty significant at the middle school level.
What's that conversation like? If you have one of those kids one-to-one across your desk, across the cafeteria table, in the hallway, sitting on the curb out front, what's that conversation like? Because you're a dad.
Sure. Dad, first and foremost, always.
Yeah.
Try to put myself in the situation of, what would the message I would want my own children to hear if they were in this type of situation. It's supportive. It's a supportive message. It's a message of hope. It's a message of things can be different, and here's some resources that we have for you. While I might not always have the answers, I have a great team in my building, and also know a lot of great folks in the community and resources that we can help to get students involved in and their families.
Because the ultimate for you at a building in education is that when they walk out the door at the end of the school day, when they walk out the door on a Friday with a weekend ahead, that ultimately that when they come back with the same level of enthusiasm, less baggage or no baggage, that would be an ideal world. I mean, it really would. And yet, ultimately, Emily, you have to send your 11-year-old out the door to school and elsewhere.
To Western Heights, by the way.
To Western Heights, right, where it's working out okay, I think.
Pretty well.
Yes.
But we can't do 24-hour. They're not our jurisdiction 24 hours, and that's the challenge.
It's our challenge it's a great challenge, but it's a challenge to understand what life is like, because it's significantly different perhaps than what it looks like for us when we go home for our own children. But our job is to really understand and support as much as possible. In the end, the education aspect of school is what we're measured on, but there's no way to get there without the support that it really takes to be able to make students feel safe, make them feel comfortable, make them understand that they have people that are there to help them and resources to help them and their families.
All right, Emily, last word before we go. You got the floor.
I have the floor. I just want to say thank you to Washington County and to our community and to Matt and to the school system for being so enthusiastic about this. And I truly believe this community effort is going to get us in a much better place. It's encouraging to see the success stories, whether small or large, every single day. And I'm hopeful for the future.
If we have touched somebody today who hasn't been in contact, hasn't joined in, has additional questions, maybe concerns, the Facebook page or the website would be the way to go.
Yes.
And there's a way there easily to find folks to contact individually.
Yes.
For the one-to-one involvement.
And they can email washingtongoespurple@gmail.com as well.
Right. Very good. Thank you two very much. Appreciate you
Thanks, Will.
coming out to
Thank
do the
you.
show. Emily Keller, member of Hagerstown City Council. We miss Vicki Sterling. She was with us last year and will be again, I'm sure, with the Washington County Health Department, an integral part of the effort. And Matt Mauriello joins us today, principal at Western Heights Middle School. Today's show has been sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. It's Lunchtime Live, the third Thursday of the month at this time, a partnership between Washington County Public Schools and WJEJ.